With us this morning is Steve Bannon, was part of the Trump White House, and was in the movie business at one time. And I understand he has a new movie called Trump at War. Good morning, Steve Bannon. How are you this morning?
Hey, John. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Well, Steve, you're one knowledgeable guy. People consider you a genius. You were at Goldman Sachs. You made a ton of money. You were in the movie business. You were right there at the Oval Office at the beginning of the Trump presidency. Tell us what's going on in America.
Well, look, I think that we're very divided. We're very divided for a reason. You know, there's kind of two camps that think the country should go in different directions. There's this kind of Trump populist, nationalist, conservative, working class, middle class kind of group that thinks the country ought to go in one direction, which is much more nationalistic. And then there's a kind of the social justice warrior, the Marxist, the cultural Marxist left, that's the progressive part of the Democratic Party, that are really globalists and play into what Wall Street believes, and they think the country should go in a different direction. So look, the country's been divided before. The country's had, different opinions about what the direction of the country should be. I think this is actually quite natural, and I think it gets settled at the ballot box. And I think we're seeing that the come from behind of Donald Trump in 2016 caught the globalists and the Democratic Party asleep. They're clearly awake. This contest for the midterm elections, John, I've said for 6 or 8 months, is Trump's first reelect. This is a referendum on Trump. And we'll see how it plays out over the next couple of weeks. But, yeah, the country's divided, but I don't think that in and of itself is a negative thing.
And we get the midterm elections coming in about 9 days from Sunday here. And what is the pulse? I mean, everybody says, I was at a meeting on Thursday at J.P. Morgan, and their head lobbyist believes the House is going to go Democratic. Give us your pulse of what you think is going on.
John, when I left the White House in the summer, in August of 2017, I met with people that were going to run these House campaigns from Congress in September of 2017. At the time, they were talking about an 80 to 100 seat sweep for the Democrats. And this is because they thought, Trump's polls were low. There wasn't a lot getting done. He was very controversial. And in addition, the left was going to have this kind of Tea Party fervor. I went on Hannity 100 days from the election and said, look, this is a referendum on Trump. It's a national election. I think right now we lose 35 to 40 seats. I can tell you, 10 days in, 9 days in, I think it's tight. I think the Senate is going to be fine. I think we could we'll hold it and pick up maybe 2 or 3 seats. The House, I got to tell you, it's a complete dogfight. It could go either way. And right now, I think there are 25 seats that are clearly up for grabs, and people are going to have to turn out. If Trump voters turn out, I actually think we hold the House. If Trump voters don't turn out, I think we'll lose it. But it's certainly not the blue wave. The blue tsunami that the young progressives that have been walking these precincts were promised by the Democratic Party, and particularly the opposition party media. All this promise of this massive tsunami is over. This is going to be very hard fought. It'll come down to a handful of districts, and I think there's a very, very narrow gate that the Republicans have to go through, but I think there's a chance to actually hold the House.
Well, I did say this morning at that J.P. Morgan conference, I got up and I said, we're in the exact same place we were November of 16. A lot of angry people in our country. And what happened in November on Election Day, nobody expected Trump to win. I didn't expect it for him to win. And he surprised everybody. So can we have a surprise victory?
There were two people that expected it, and that was Donald Trump and Stephen K. Bannon. We had figured for the first time I'd come on to the campaign in mid-August that we're absolutely convinced that we were going to win, that we just stuck to the plan, and Trump stuck to the plan. John, one of the stories I haven't told too often is that when the exit polls came out that night at 5 o'clock on Election Day, the exit polls actually had us tied in Iowa and Ohio and then losing everywhere else. In a massive win for Hillary Clinton. It shows you that even people that voted for Donald Trump were, unwilling to tell pollsters that they had done it. I think you're seeing that again. I think these polls are understated for the Trump voters. Now, it's incumbent that the Trump voter get out, and that's what we're doing. I'm going around the country showing this film to grassroots leaders, to Tea Party people, to Trump voters, to motivate them to get to the polls, to walk precincts, to drag their friends and family and other Trump supporters there, because this thing's going to come down to the wire.
I agree with you 110%. I think there's a lot of angry people out there that are afraid to tell the pollsters which way they're going to vote because they don't want their friends to think less of them. Let's talk about this caravan of people that somebody is motivating them to march towards the American border. Tell us your feelings.
Well, look, this is a tragedy of biblical proportions. I mean, the failed states of what they call the Northern Triangle of Central America, something has to be done, and there has to be some more direct engagement. I don't think we can look at this any other way than it's a tragedy. And all this kind of thing that Soros is planning it, or, people have called me and said, hey, were you in back of it because of the optics? I think we got to put that aside for a second and think about the human tragedy. It's clearly not going to be acceptable, and certainly not going to be acceptable to this president for those people to come across as economic migrants. I mean, we have an asylum process. It's being tightened up. I think President Trump's very humanitarian policy of zero tolerance sent the right signal to not allow these people to be caught up by the human trafficking cartels that make so much money off this human agony. And I think Trump's taking the right position. I think that we got to go build the southern wall. We have to make it's 100%. I think we got to go back to zero tolerance about crossing the border. And this is not helping those people. This is just going to lead to more tragedy. But the deeper and more fundamental question, I think, is we got to stop focusing on places like Afghanistan and pumping in $50, $60, $70 billion a year, while we have failed states like Mexico and these northern countries in Central America like Honduras and Guatemala. We have to get engaged down there. The problems, John, of those people can't be solved by the working class people in Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. It has to be solved down in Central America. And I think it's going to require more engagement.
I agree with you. And the other thing is
Latin America. You have Venezuela.
Yes.
See, look, Venezuela is a failed state. That's imploding. You got Argentina under IMF control now, and then you've got Brazil that's having an election today, and it's going to have they have Captain Bolsonaro, who I happen to think very highly of, is stepping into a situation of a country that's devolving into anarchy. And so, if you talk about the Monroe Doctrine, we have to spend much more time focused on the Caribbean, Central America, Mexico, and Latin America. These are countries that are right on our border or near our border. They're in the Western Hemisphere. They're imploding right now. It's only going to cause massive problems. And I think it's time for the American people, and I know President Trump wants to get engaged. And it's not like we want to insert ourselves everywhere, but we need to start paying attention to this, or we're going to have more of this migrant issue. It's only going to become worse and worse and worse.
What we talked about is follow the money. They admit that somebody is funding some people that are creating this march. Now, the generic word is like, give me a Xerox. The generic word is, it must be Soros. But if it's not Soros, who is it? And shouldn't our government make these people disclose? Or shouldn't the FBI follow the money?
Well, listen, whoever's doing this, you've heard everything from the Chinese to doing it through Venezuela, that Soros and the NGOs. I mean, the one thing about Soros that people should understand is that the NGOs, the non-government organizations in Europe, are the ones exacerbating this problem in Italy. I mean, that's one of the reasons the Italians, had this election where they put a populist nationalist government in place, because this situation coming up from sub-Saharan Africa and North Africa through Libya. It was really the Soros NGOs out there that were, causing a lot of the problems. And I think that's why people naturally look, are they involved in this caravan? I don't think anybody knows, and it's clearly, that should be investigated. I think the bigger problem is this is not going to go away. These are failed states down there. These countries are failed states. There has to be some sort of, I think, American leadership in order to sort this out, or we're going to be continually inundated with this problem. And that's why Trump, I think, is going to stop playing. Trump very well. He's going to stop playing games with the Congress after this election, and he's going to force his border wall. We need the border wall for southern border security. We can't be sending down the 101st Airborne, the 82nd Airborne, the National Guard. It's too expensive. It takes resources away from other things we need those folks to focus on. We need a southern wall, and we need it now.
I agree 110%. Saudi Arabia, real fast. People are shocked. There are killings in Saudi Arabia. It's like they were shocked when there was sex in Las Vegas, and our friend Steve Wynn lost his job. Sex in Las Vegas? I'm shocked. Don't these Saudi Arabians all kill people all the time, chop off arms, and that's part of their way of doing business?
Well, listen, they've been an ally, and they've been a strong ally of the United States for many, many decades. You know, the Soviet Union would not have collapsed unless the Saudis were there to basically, pump as much oil as possible at that time at a certain price, and basically broke the back of the Soviet economy. While we broke their back with technology and a larger defense budget, the Soviets were so dependent upon shipping, natural gas and oil that the Saudis were great allies. Listen, this thing is horrific. I think President Trump is correct. There's got to be an investigation. Has to be full transparency. President Trump has engaged Mike Pompeo, who's Secretary of State. He's also former head of the CIA. He's engaged Gina Haspel, who's now head of the CIA. They're both incredibly competent people. They're deeply engaged in this. And I think we got to wait and see what happens and have an investigation. I actually agree with certain people that maybe the Saudis can't investigate themselves. It has to be more thorough. And if they find out it was ordered or whatever, people have to be held accountable. I just don't think in this day and age you can have a situation where you're walking into consulates and taking people and killing them, and particularly, if they cut the guy up, et cetera. So I think this is very disturbing. MBS, the Crown Prince, or the Deputy Crown Prince, I guess the Crown Prince now, who's been somebody that has been a reformer, has been somebody who's put this called Vision 2030, which is trying to restructure the Saudi economy away from just a reliance on oil and gas and too high technology, been looked at as a reformer. If he's somehow responsible, it's going to have to be dealt with. I think President Trump, once again, with the media hectoring him, understands that, hey, the geopolitics of the Persian Gulf is central to the Judeo-Christian West, both Israel, Western Europe, and the United States. And you just can't hot-foot it around and jump to conclusions and do what the media is very immature in this regard. And Trump, I think, once again, like in China, with Iran, with NATO, you see Trump's steady hand, not getting bulldozed by these guys, but doing something very prudent. I think Saudi Arabia is the absolute case where President Trump is taking a prudent stance and going about this smartly with two smart people like Pompeo and Haspel.
Steve, before we sign off, let's talk about your film one more time. Where can people see this film?
Over 7 million people have viewed it already. It's up online. Just go to trumpatwar.com. Just Google Trump at War. The film is free for download. You can show it to your family, put it up on your computer, show it to your friends. Or if you want to, we can come and have a screening. We've screened it all over the place. Staten Island the other night, at the Cosmopolitan Club in New York. We're up in Buffalo. We've been out in Arizona, New Mexico, Texas. I'm going to Florida. We're making 25 stops between now and Election Day, showing the film everywhere. Just go to trumpatwar.com, or just Google Trump at War. It'll come up. It's totally free. Use it as you will. We're looking to get 10 to 15 million viewings of this by Election Day, and I think it's going to make a big difference.
Steve Bannon, thank you so much for everything you do for our country, and you're one smart guy, and fight for America.
John, I love the show, love being on, and keep it on. It's one of the best shows on radio, so keep doing it, brother. Love it.
Thank you.